Star Wars Jedi Survivor is both great and terrible. And today, I brought a friend that would help me illustrate that point. Introduce yourself.
No.
Nice. Well, anyway, this is David, and he's going to be sharing his own thoughts on the game while I go through what I like and didn't like. To start off, I want to talk about the story, and yes, I plan on spoiling it, so here's your warning. The game picks up about 5 years after Fallen Order, with the original group of characters in that game having disbanded. Cal, who's now working for Saw Gerrera, is currently on a mission to steal valuable military data from a senator on Coruscant. However, that mission kinda goes wrong by the arrival of the Ninth Sister, resulting in the death of the senator. Cal manages to retrieve the data but loses the rest of his team, leaving him and a mercenary named Bode Akuna as the sole survivors. The data reveals that the Empire has only grown stronger despite their efforts. In his escape from Coruscant, Cal damages his ship, the Mantis, and takes this opportunity to seek out Grease, the original owner of the Mantis, to do repairs to the damaged ship. Come to find out, Grease is on a planet called Kobo, which has essentially been overrun by a gang called the Bedlam Raiders. While on Kobo and interfering with the Bedlam Raiders' plan, Cal discovers a droid named ZN-A4, who gives him a High Republic device and information about the planet Tanalorr. With this information, Cal activates the Forest Array, which is essentially a High Republic science facility, which will lead him to Tanalorr, the planet he just learned about. Now keep in mind, what's important about Tanalorr is the fact that it can't be reached by basically anyone. And the idea here is that once they get to Tanalorr, they'll be safe from the Empire forever. But, bringing it back to Cal, he has forced visions of two High Republic Jedi, Dagan Gera and Centauri Khri, who found Tanalorr. However, when Cal finds Dagan, who is centuries old at this point, it turns out that Dagan is kind of a dickhead, who has fallen to the dark side and begins attacking Cal, and now we have our main villain for like the next third of the game. Now that Dagan is freed from the Bacta tank and he and Cal have a fight, he leaves with the help of the Bedlam Raiders, who he's now aligned with. Realizing the value of an inaccessible planet, Cal, Bode, and Grease repair their ship and head to Jeddah, where Cere, Marin, and Eno Cordova are working with the Hidden Path Resistance organization to help build the Jedi archives. Now, if you haven't played Fallen Order, I just said a whole bunch of names that don't really mean anything to you, but the point is that once we get to Jeddah and reconnect with all these people, the main gang, I guess, from the first game is now back and working together again. There's a little here and there about Tanalorr's history and the missing compasses that will help people get to Tanalorr by navigating the Kobo Abyss. And for those wondering what the Kobo Abyss is, it's basically a giant nebula that sits right outside of Kobo that is impossible to traverse through. Ships that go in there get lost in there, never come out, they blow up, whatever. It's bad to go in there. But on the other side of that abyss is Tanalorr, which is why it's so inaccessible. But back to the compasses. They established that there are 3, but 2 of them are irreparable, and they managed to find one and repair it. However, Bode, from earlier, betrays the group, killing Cordova and stealing the compass. Cal chases him, and come to find out, Bode has been a spy for the Empire this entire time. But not only that, Bode was once a Jedi, meaning he's Force sensitive, good with a lightsaber, and basically beats the shit out of Cal. Bookmark that because that is important and we'll come back to it. But anyway, Cal loses to Bode, gets knocked out. You then start playing as Cere, who's defending the Jedi Temple on the planet Jeddah from the Empire's attack. As you're playing with Cere, Vader shows up. You fight Vader, but he's Vader, so you lose and Cere dies. So in the span of like an hour, 2 main characters have died, and all of it is basically Bode's fault. Cal's pissed off by Bode's betrayal and ends up tracking Bode down to an Empire base in the Nova Garen system, which is just a big ass asteroid. I don't know why, whatever. It's at this point that we learn about Bode's history as a Jedi. Now, Bode once had a wife. The Empire killed that wife, but before she died, they had a child named Kata. And Kata has been mentioned throughout the story up until this point. I just didn't really feel like mentioning her because she didn't play any kind of role up until now. Now, Bode's master plan was to take Kata to Tanalorr because he was tired of being in service to the Empire. He knew that at some point they were probably going to end up killing him for being Force sensitive or turning him into an Inquisitor, whatever. Point is, Empire's bad, we need to go to a place where they can't find us. Turns out that Bode intentionally lured Cal to Nova Garon so that Cal could take out Bode's handler and essentially eliminate two birds with one stone, banking on Cal essentially murdering the entire base so that nobody would have any more records of Bode and his service to the Empire. And as soon as you're about to catch him, he dips off with Kata and the compass through the Kobo Abyss right to Tanalorr, and Cal has to fight the rest of the Imperial garrison. So, like I said, there were only 3 compasses that could get you to Tanalorr. 2 of them broke. Bode has the 3rd one. But oh wait, there's a recording from Centauri Kree explaining how you can use the arrays on Kobo to open an alternate path through the Abyss. Cal and Merrin use that and show up on Tanalorr, finding Bode, like, pacing and leaving his daughter unattended. Like, I don't really know what his plan here was. It's literally just them on this planet. Yeah, he's just kind of hanging out. Cal and Merrin pull up. They're trying to give him chance after chance because they don't want to make Kata an orphan, but at this point, the dude has killed how many people, responsible for the deaths of how many people, just off this dickhead. You end up fighting Bode, and throughout the whole fight, Cal is trying to convince Bode to calm down and redeem himself, but Bode ends up attacking Merrin, which for Cal is a big ass no-no, so he kills him. Oh, I forgot to mention that it's a big ass no-no because Cal and Merrin are starting a relationship. Sort of. So they kill Bode, adopt his daughter Kata, and have a funeral for Bode, Seer, and Cordova. They then make contact with the Hidden Path with the goal of relocating them to Tanalorr. And that's basically the gist of the story. I left out a lot of emotional story beats and some character moments, but they weren't really important to the overall summary of the story. But yeah, that's essentially how the game plays out. Now that that's all cleared up, I'm going to talk more about what I think the game does positively, the characters, the gameplay, the settings, things like that. Now, one of the standout features of Jedi Survivor is the game's expanded openness compared to Fallen Order. It's not nearly as linear, and Fallen Order really wasn't that linear to begin with, but Jedi Survivor does a lot more in terms of allowing you to go off the beaten path and encounter a mini-boss or a completely random combat event, a puzzle, meet a new character, just things like that that help you engage and feel more in depth with the world. I guess a better example would be Fallen Order seemed more like a showcase for other planets, but Jedi Survivor definitely feels like these planets exist and are lived in without Cal. And the variety of landscapes within the planets is very refreshing as well. Like, you have ancient ruins on one planet, a lush forest on a different planet, a sprawling city in another one. It's just very good at keeping your attention and not letting you get too bored. Speaking of boredom, the game offers a wide range of cosmetic items that blow Fallen Order out the water. Whereas in Fallen Order, you were basically stuck with ponchos and getting different colors for the poncho, here you can actually fully customize Cal from his hair to his shoes and everything in between. It really feels like you're able to make him a personal version of Cal.
Oh, that's hot. That's hot.
Like, it's cool to be able to see people's gameplay, watch other people play the game, and see how different their character is compared to yours, cosmetically speaking. Where everybody's game does converge, though, is the story and the characters. The characters from the previous game in Cal, Seer, Merrin, and Grease all feel like they've undergone natural progressions. Where you find them in this story seems like the most likely place they'd end up after the first one. If, and this is a big if you can get past the whole we split up in between games thing. Now, if you've played Fallen Order, that game ends with everybody having won and, there's a slight victory. They're ready to take the fight to the Empire. Everything looks a little bit more hopeful. And for some reason, in between games, everybody has gone their separate ways. Cal and BD1 work for Saw Gerrera. Seer and Merrin and even Cordova are all on Jedha doing whatever the hell with the Hidden Path. And Grease has opened up a new bar/restaurant thing on Kobo. So while the natural progression of the characters individually is cool, the abrupt split between the characters as a unit is kind of disorienting and jarring, especially if you played the previous game. I don't know, it kind of left me with mixed feelings in the beginning, but I quickly got over it. Everybody else though, from Bode to Ravis to Dagan Gera, it all felt weak.
Hold on now, what do you mean by weak?
Well, what I mean is that there seems to be a lack of genuine connection between Cal and the villains he goes up against. Unlike in the previous game, where at the bare minimum, they kill Cal's good friend in the beginning of the game, which gives us a reason to go after it and get into the story, that isn't really present here. Their backstories are explained well enough, but there isn't connective tissue between them and Cal specifically. Rather than organically weaving them into the narrative, the game often falls back on contrived situations where Cal kinda just pick fights with them just to keep the plot moving forward. They do try to thematically connect Dagon Gera and Cal together by having them both tread that line of being so obsessed with a goal that you kind of lose yourself in achieving it, which I thought was a cool attempt. I just wish they kind of pushed that a little further. It felt more so that the game was trying to convince me of their parallel instead of letting me come to that conclusion naturally by putting me in situations that would help me draw that conclusion. Ravis is literally a non-factor. He's the second in command to Dagon and is just a boss to get to Dagon. But what really pushed me over the line was Bode. The twist around his force sensitivity feels like a narrative element that's been tacked on without real integration into the storyline overall. There's not really any foreshadowing or hints behind it, and when he does reveal it, it's kind of leaving you wondering about its relevance and impact on the overall plot. It honestly feels like at some point during development they were like, oh shit, we need to make him force sensitive because if he's not force sensitive, Cal will just beat the hell out of him.
Bode being force sensitive was a cool twist which added to his threat and made his betrayal much more believable. It would be hard to believe that a normal person could pull off deception this large around so many Jedi.
That's a good point, and I'd be inclined to believe it more if there was an explanation as to how he was able to hide amongst these Jedi. Cal even says, how did I not detect him? How did I not sense him? And that's a very valid question. How did he not sense him? Cal didn't sense him, Cordova didn't sense him, Seer didn't sense him, and being able to hide yourself from other force sensitives is a very skilled technique that's usually used by the Sith, something that we saw Palpatine do. And the fact that they just didn't include the explanation really makes it feel as though there just wasn't one. I'm even on the wiki right now, and there's nothing here about his ability to do that being foreshadowed or even discussed. At best, you can say, okay, he was Republic intelligence, and that would probably be the reason why he's able to hide his force sensitivity. He's essentially a spy. But I don't think I should have to reach that far to come up with an explanation for something that doesn't make any sense. I know it sounds like I'm shitting on the game's story very hard, and honestly, I enjoyed my time. I enjoyed playing the game. I just feel like the game is held together a lot by its combat experiences and encounters. And I came to that conclusion by asking myself, if this were a movie, meaning I didn't have any of the combat encounters, I wasn't playing the game at all, I was simply watching what was happening, would I enjoy the story? And I don't really think that I would, or I guess I would enjoy it at like a mid-level, but still have a lot of questions for it. Now, as I've said on this channel before, I don't like to just shit on things. I do like to try and offer my own ideas to see how I could improve something that I didn't like, at least to my own preferences. With that being said, I think that this story could be a lot more digestible and a lot more enjoyable if the villains converged a lot more than they do. Now, I'm not about to do a complete story rewrite and try and recreate the entire events of this game and how they play out. I'm just going to be suggesting very rough ideas that might help. So let's say you have Ravis, right? He's not really consequential in the main game, but let's say in this rewrite, he is the reason why Cal's group has broken up. Maybe he's just been hunting Cal relentlessly through the galaxy. He's gunning people down left and right. Cal is like, okay, this dude is on my ass. If he keeps doing this, eventually he's going to get the people that I can't live without. He's going to get Seer and Marin and Grease and all that. He's the reason.
Wait a second. Ravis was obsessed with honor. I doubt he'd be a bounty hunter.
That's true, but in this version, Ravis would have lost his way, for lack of better words, after Dagon disappears. He now fulfills contracts for the Empire using his own personal army. So now the only thing more important to Ravis than the bounty on Cal's head is finding Dagon again. Ravis repeatedly fails because Cal is just that guy, whatever. The Empire gives Ravis Bode so that Bode can infiltrate Cal's team and subtly push Cal in the direction of locating Dagon, who, just like in the main game, is in a Bacta tank, but I would change his location from where it is in the game to a Jedi temple. And Ravis knows this and knows that only a Jedi can open it, which is why he's getting Bode to do this. Obviously, Cal inadvertently awakens Dagon, and a lot of the story can play out essentially the same. And you can even keep it to where Cal kills Ravis within the first, third of the game, sure. Around the midpoint of the game comes the big betrayal. Bode kills Cordova, leaves with the compass. This time, however, Bode betrays both Cal's team and the Empire and ends up buying into Dagon's story of Tanalorr and, taking his daughter to Tanalorr for safety. And here's where we would get to another pretty big change. I don't think that I would want Vader to kill Seer. I get that it was a really cool moment in the first game, and a lot of Seer's backstory is tied into things with Vader and that whole side of Star Wars, but it just doesn't really seem necessary anymore. The Vader fight in Jedi Survivor just seems like a longer version of the quote-unquote fight from Fallen Order. I also think it would be cool if Seer at least got to see Tanalorr. But anyway, Seer and Cal travel through the Kobo Abyss, get to Tanalorr, where they fight Bode and Dagon. Cal kills Bode, all that stuff with Bode's daughter, yada yada yada. Dagon ends up killing Seer, and Cal, enraged, begins his fight with Dagon and kills him too. Now, I know it's not foolproof. I can already see someone in the comments typing about how stupid it is and, well, you actually overlooked this thing here and this thing here and this wouldn't make sense because blah, blah, blah. But I just feel like the way that I structured it allowed for all the villains to equally have a stake in the story. They've all taken something from Cal or are the cause of him having lost something, which makes the story more personal.
Trash idea. One of your worst.
Okay, I'll just move on then. Here's where we talk about where the game is absolutely fucking terrible. Now, I said before that part of the reason why the game is so enjoyable is because the combat holds the game together, right? That only applies for the middle difficulty Jedi Knight, I think. If you play this game on Grandmaster, prepare to rip your hair out.
It's the biggest piece of dog shit.
The game is very clearly not optimized for Grandmaster. The hitboxes are crazy. Cal barely responds when you press a button. There's delays after you dodge and sometimes after you jump. I have literally been animation locked right after I've done something or evaded an attack, and the opponent just turned around and one-shot me, and that was the end. And this has happened when I was at the very tail end of a boss fight. If you thought Ogdo Bogdo was bad from the first game, you have to fight 2 of them. And you can clearly tell this wasn't playtested because they have ridiculous combo mix-ups, one-shot unblockables, hitboxes that literally snatch you out of midair, a cooldown time that allows for about 1, maybe 2 hits if you're pushing it, not to mention you're fighting in a small-ass arena, and there's fucking 2 of them.
Get good, loser. If you're gonna cry, lower the difficulty.
I shouldn't have to lower the difficulty. It's about what's fair in a combat encounter. I've got no issue with things being hard or difficult or anything like that, but I expect the mechanics to hold up so that I can at least fight to the best of my ability. They shouldn't lock important gameplay mechanics behind specific stances. I should be able to block, evade, or dodge out of any attack from any stance. And these major combat issues pop up when you're fighting groups of enemies or bosses. If you're just fighting one dude by himself, you should be able to parry his attack and return in kind with your own combo. But when you're fighting multiple people, let's say you parry dude 1, dudes 2 and 3 are attacking you immediately so that there's no time for you to punish dude 1 who you've just parried. In other games, usually other enemies have less aggro and that they notice you're fighting someone and will kind of back off and let you do your thing, but not here.
My disappointment is immeasurable, and my day is ruined.
Every group fight is clunky as hell because you're sitting dodging every single attack, waiting for an opening where you can hit somebody and they can't hit you, which again would not be an issue if the game mechanically made sense. There are 5 lightsaber stances in the game. Locking a core mechanic such as dodging out of an attack or attack canceling behind dual wield stance was a stupid idea because it places that stance above all the other ones. It makes it so that you can't really explore the other stances because they're not as viable as dual wield. There's not a single situation where dual wield doesn't really make sense to use. And if that's the case, why even have other stances at all? It's almost like the game is designed for you to be hit and to be punished.
There are force upgrades that can help with situations like this. It's literally already in the game. This isn't a game issue, it's a skill issue.
Okay, so let me ask you this. When your force meter is out, what are you supposed to do then? Oh, you don't know. Okay, and what about the players that haven't spec'd into that portion of the skill tree? Fuck them, I guess. Imagine locking parrying behind a skill point in a game like Sekiro. You would think that was stupid, because you're able to parry in Sekiro from the moment that you can pick up the sword. Yes, there are other parries that you can unlock, namely that one where he steps on the sword after the opponent thrusts it towards you. I don't remember what it's called, don't at me. But the point is, you don't need to unlock that in order to be competent with the game. The base mechanics work just fine to the point where you could go the whole game without ever using that. This is a Soulsborne-esque game. Not an exact copy, but it clearly is drawing inspiration from games like Elden Ring and Sekiro. But the difference in those games is that they're actually mechanically sound. And when you're playing on higher difficulties, that really makes itself apparent. There are just entirely too many times where Cal didn't raise his lightsaber to defend himself, or you get caught in a bullshit animation, or you're swamped by enemies and literally can't even react. There are too many times I've been caught in a corner and cannot dodge out because for some reason the game just treats enemies as this impenetrable wall and I'm just attack spammed or unblockable spammed or anything under the sun. If you ask me, this game was not meant to be played on Grandmaster, and you'd honestly have a much better time playing it on Jedi Knight. That being said though, the experience on Jedi Knight is great. It actually allows you to have fun with the combat, which will help you overlook some of the weaker parts of the story. And although I was critiquing the game's story earlier in the video, I will admit that Jedi Survivor's story is a lot more competent and entertaining than a lot of what Star Wars has put out in recent years. Overall, I'd give the game a B, and would recommend it to just about anyone who is a fan of Star Wars. Except on PC. It's trash on PC. It has frame rate issues basically everywhere, but on PC it's abysmal. But anyway, if you've made it this far, thank you for watching. This took me a lot longer than I'd like to admit. I wasn't expecting to have this much to say about the game, but anyway, thank you for watching. I'll catch you next time.